June 2021, Albuquerque, New Mexico. The drive to Albuquerque was nice and simple, no issues along the way. Since we spent most of the last 5 months in Texas, it was nice to leave the state and move on and see something else. Our destination was the Stagecoach RV Park just north of Albuquerque, New Mexico. But thanks to the fires in Arizona, we had overcast skies, although they made for excellent sunsets. Our first full day in Albuquerque, we met up with Ken and Karen, 2 old friends of Janet's and now 2 new friends of mine. Ken and Karen became the best tour guides you can possibly imagine. They started their grand tour of Albuquerque with breakfast at the Range Cafe. If you're thinking the Range Cafe was named for the open field kind of range, you'd be wrong. It was actually named for all the old stoves displayed inside the restaurant. The cafe also has a huge collection of plates signed by various celebrities that came through Albuquerque. After breakfast, we started our tour at the Pueblo of Jemez. This pueblo is a recognized tribe, and we are on tribal land. Pueblo had a museum with the history of this pueblo, along with some buildings that showed how they lived. After exploring the museum, we headed up into the mountains that had these beautiful red cliffs. Our first stop was the Gilman and the Jemez Tunnels. These tunnels were located in the Guadalupe Box Canyon. The canyon was cut through these rocks by the Guadalupe River. It was a bit of a climb across some boulders, but I was able to get down to the river, and to my surprise, the water was not really cold. And although I couldn't see very far, what I could see looked like a series of small waterfalls that went into some decent-sized pools that looked just perfect for lounging in. I'm thinking that this would be the perfect place to relax on a nice hot day. Getting to the river was just a little difficult in this particular area of the canyon. I'm thinking there might be easier areas up along the road. We also took a look at the tunnels that were cut directly into the rock going through this canyon. The tunnels weren't very large, and although this is a 2-way road, you'd be hard-pressed to get 2 cars on it at once. After a brief look, it was time to move on to the Soda Dam Springs. This was a natural dam laid down over time by the minerals coming out of the spring. The Soda Dam Springs are hot springs, so the water is really hot, but if you get just a little bit away from the source, it becomes comfortably warm. This was a fun area because it gave me a chance to climb around and explore. After exploring some of the tunnels inside the dam, I had to get up to the top and look at the view. The climb up was a little challenging, but nothing I couldn't do. Okay, I lied. I didn't go up that way. If you went to the back side of the dam, there was a much easier way to walk up and get to the top of the dam, although it was still a little bit of a climb. The view from the top was pretty nice, I have to say. We didn't spend too much time on top of that dam looking around because we had other places to go. So after taking a quick peek and waving back down at the girls, it was time to move on to our next stop. And our next stop was further up the canyon at Battleship Rock. This was a neat little area in the pines that had some nice little trails that you could walk. Nothing difficult, super easy. And although we didn't come up here to hike, we did take a few short walks. It was really beautiful up here amongst the trees and next to the river. Oh, and by the way, did you know that these pine trees smell like vanilla? This entire area up in the mountains smells just wonderful, and walking these trails is fun. Most of this canyon runs up along the river, and the trails, well, they all have these nice little mountain streams that feed the river, and that just makes them that much more fun to walk. These streams and rivers also make for good fishing. As we were walking along, it wasn't uncommon for us to spot little mountain trout in these streams. The variety of trails up here is also really cool. You can stay in the valleys and walk pretty much straight, or you can take off and go up into the mountains, and now the trails become difficult. After a short walk, it was time to continue up the mountain to our destination, which was the Valles Caldera. Oh, did I forget to mention? We aren't climbing a mountain, we're climbing a volcano, and this is the caldera of the volcano. The caldera is almost 14 miles wide from an eruption that happened nearly 1 million years ago. After 2 hours of driving and a brief look, it was time to turn around and head on down the mountain and get ready for tomorrow. Our first stop on the next day was the Piedras Marcadas Canyon. This canyon is known for the petroglyphs, which are etched into the volcanic rock alongside this valley. The age of these petroglyphs range from 300 to 3,000 years old. The local Indians have been living here for a very long time, and some of these petroglyphs are rather hard to see, so you really have to look up close if you want to notice them. The literature for the area says there are thousands upon thousands of these petroglyphs in the rocks. One number I saw had them going up as high as 4,000 in this one canyon alone. You can spend a lot of time up here looking through these rocks trying to find petroglyphs. It makes for a fun day. After some time in the desert, it was time to go back down into the city. We decided to explore Old Town in Albuquerque. This place was really nice, super colorful, with all sorts of shops and art galleries that you can just explore and look around in. And although I didn't watch it, I understand that the Breaking Bad series was all filmed down here. We spent several hours in Old Town Albuquerque exploring the shops and checking out the sculptures outside of the museum located right there in Old Town. And we ended our exploration at the Blackbird Coffee House. It was a little late in the day. We didn't have coffee, we just had some tea. And I'll tell you, it was a great place to sit and look out at the courtyard of this coffee shop. Very relaxing place. The next day, we were off to the Bandelier National Monument. This national monument is there to preserve the home and the territory of the ancestral Puebloans who lived in this area of the Southwest. The Puebloans lived here between 1100 and 1600 AD. This area is huge. If you're thinking of this as some little old Indian village with teepees, you'd be very wrong. This place had thousands of people, houses that were like 3 stories high, attached to the side of these cliffs. And although there are caves with ladders that take you up and into these caves, the Puebloans didn't actually live in these caves. They lived in buildings that were built up along the side of the cliff. Walking through this area was really cool. I enjoyed climbing the ladders and looking inside these very small caves. I was torn when visiting this area. On the one hand, it's kind of cool to see the place as it is today, but on the other hand, it'd be really cool if somebody rebuilt this thing and made it look exactly like it looked back in the day. As I said, these dwellings were up on the side of a cliff, a fair distance up above the valley, and we walked these little trails. And you should remember that these rails and these neat little steps weren't here back in the day. These people just walked alongside this cliff on the rocks. Braver than I am. Of course, while we were up there, we also explored the valley floor and saw this wonderful deer, and of course, you had to sniff some trees, 'cause they smell so good. After getting our tree fix, it was time to go home and get ready for tomorrow, which started with coffee. Our destination was Sandia Peak in the Cibola National Forest. But before we went there, one stop at the Music Road. The Music Road is a part of Highway 66 and it plays God Bless America as you drive across it. Although the road is no longer maintained, so it's really hard to hear. But if you listen, you may very well hear it. Here we go. like I said, hard to hear, but it's there if you really listen. We heard that Sandia Peak was a beautiful place where you can see all of Albuquerque below it, and we were not disappointed. We even got a chance to get a good look at a deer alongside the road on our drive up. Weird thing, when we got up there, my key fob stopped working so I couldn't lock or start my car. We saw this sign a little bit later. I guess they're not kidding. I eventually did get my car started, and on the way down, we stopped at this campsite for lunch with a view. First one of these we've had since we got here to Albuquerque. After lunch with a view, we headed on down to Sandia Peak ski area where I hoped to do some skiing. Well, it's either the wrong time of year or maybe COVID has this place shut down because there was no skiing to be had. And oddly enough, the slopes were the wrong color. I'm used to white, not green. But either way, this is a nice little ski area up in the mountains above Albuquerque. So after an epic ski fail, we headed on down the mountain to Tinkertown Museum. The Tinkertown Museum is a renowned New Mexico folk art museum by Ross Ward. Ross Ward was well known for his elaborate handmade dioramas of the Old West and circus scenes. And this museum was a great way for us to end our adventures in Albuquerque. Our stay in Albuquerque wouldn't have been nearly as spectacular as it was without our friends Ken and Karen showing us around. So thanks a lot, guys. We appreciate it. So our time in Albuquerque has come to an end. And if I have any complaints about Albuquerque, it's the way they spell it. What were they thinking? And again on this trip, we haven't added any new states to our list. But we've had a good time. And again, it's time to move on. So I most certainly hope that we'll see you at our next stop.